He had given up every objective to save his friend. He had given up the armature, the core, the gem, and even Zenobia. He loved Lupino, he realized. Now the rabbit was gone. A hero looks out for his friends, even when they're gone. He would send Lupino an honor guard of ravens to serve him in the halls of the Valiant. He would avenge him. There was an inscription on the platform. Balaleka lessons. It was an advert. Finally, he reached the Emperor's ship. And there was Lupino, surrounded by ravens. He was alive! They'd eaten some other rabbit. "I'll save you!" he shouted with joy and flung himself at the ravens. "Oh, you shouldn't have," said Lupino when the last raven was down. Renato threw his arms around his best friend. "I had to come. I love you, man. You really, really shouldn't have," said Lupino. And Renato felt a rather sharp pain in his back. As he collapsed, Lupino took the dagger out of Renato's back and wiped it off on Renato's sleeve. "Why? You always have to be the hero. Brave Renato, epic Renato, super sexy Renato, and I'm sick of it. But I loved you." "And you thought I was the idiot," said Lupino as Renato died. He should go back to some of the choices he'd faced before. Maybe there were new paths that had opened up, like those doors he was opening up all over the map that took him to new treasures and around his enemies. But he'd learned another true thing. Lupino was a traitor. Renato had suspected there was something wrong with the mad rabbit. But now he knew there was malice behind his goofiness. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again, faster than before, and he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Renato wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Renato felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? Ooh, sparkly, thought Renato. Give me a lever, said Archimedes, and I shall open a gate. That had been his mistake before, trusting his old friend Lupino, who'd been through so many battles with him and shared so many heartaches, who he'd rescued so many times. What was up with that guy anyway? I wonder what happens if I go that way. So close to you. His fault. They look so breakable. you looking at? Oh, right. No one.
Welcome to Earth. Bernardo told the corpses. It was something he'd seen in a play once.
Good thing those ravens never use the healing fruit.
There it was.
Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because, know your enemy. All right, maybe he should stop pretending. He knew exactly how she felt about him. But their love affair always ended with a tragic death. Unless, maybe he could find a way to dodge tragedy. Surely he could, couldn't he?
The city was burning, and there was no one to put out the fires. If somehow Zenobia survived her father and inherited his crown, what sort of empire would she be heir to? But he couldn't think about that, could he? Smashing things was fun. It looked like they'd forgotten to turn off their flamethrower. He couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the... Could he? You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato. Renato hated gogglers. It freaked him out to cut them. Renato wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? Maybe because the results tended to be disastrous. These streets were familiar. The Swordfu School was closed now, but he had been down that street 1,000 times. He knew that pub. He knew that alley. He knew the alley behind it much too well. No wonder Zenobia had chosen to invade this island herself. Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Sky River, the Iblastone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in. But why didn't he get the core? Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Renato grinned. He doesn't even know why, frowned Zenobia. That makes no sense. It's a trap, shouted the Emperor. I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators. If Renato came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. You're lying, she said. Somehow you're lying. The spell hadn't worn off yet. He had to tell the truth. The trick was in making sure she wouldn't believe it. The core is perfectly safe, he said. And he tried his hardest to sound sincere. So is the Iblastone. In fact, I was trying to get them myself. Fine then, interrogators it is, she said angrily. I gave you a chance. The Emperor's interrogators were not especially gentle, even by Weasel standards. Fortunately, Zenobia had locked him in the guest quarters on her ship, and she'd forgotten it had a toilet that, like all skyship toilets, could be vented into the abyss. This was not the sort of slippery fox he wanted to be, but just as they were about to land, he threw the latch, wrinkled his nose, and leapt through the open latrine. It was a short, safe landing. At least this part of the Nexus hadn't changed too much. Zenobia had been taking him to the Imperial outpost. She'd never expect him to go there by himself. Well, maybe she would. You never knew with her. Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it? In this chest, there were woodcuts of amazingly beautiful vixens wearing no clothes at all. And something more useful. Bernardo knew Zenobia, and Zenobia knew him. She'd suspected a trick. Now he'd vanished. She would probably guess that was his plan all along. Perfect. Maybe she wouldn't use the Sky River. At least not without taking it to the scientists at the observatory first. Meanwhile, the Emperor would be coming to the outpost personally. This could be good. Renato was face to face with the Emperor's bodyguard. They looked very tough, but the Emperor held them back.
Oh, where's my daughter?
And how would I know that? Renato grinned at him.
She lured me here so that you could kill me, didn't she?
Ah, don't be ridiculous, said Renato, trying his best to sound convincing. She loves you.
Oh, I knew it. The rabbit told me I couldn't trust her.
The Emperor hopped out the door. His phalanx of bodyguards retreated carefully. Renato heard someone call, "Arrest her!" as they left. Well, that's a job well done, thought Renato. Now the fleet will be in all sorts of disarray. But maybe he could find her in the mountains. She always used to go to the mountains to hide from the world. Maybe he could even turn her against her father. Or maybe he could reap the benefits of the chaos he had sown. It was time to report to the Rebel Council, and then launch the attack on a divided and very confused Imperial fleet. Renato felt very clever indeed. He'd told the Empire nothing but the truth, and now they suspected everything and everyone. So, why are you going to see Zenobia? He asked himself. It's not just a gloat, is it? No, of course not. Now, turning her against her father was good. It was very good. If she would actually join the rebels, that would be spectacular, right? That was definitely what he was doing. He wondered if he should have just told her the truth about her father. The Emperor had adopted her from a stray. That was the source of all her loyalty. But even then, he'd been dreaming of a bargain with the lost gods. They alone could make him immortal. The Emperor would have to seal that bargain with the life of someone who truly loved him. And who else truly loved the Emperor? But how could Renato tell her that now? Why would she ever believe him? Take a leap of faith, said the inscription. The funny thing was, she should have trusted him. He told her the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Oh, all right. The truth was, he'd played her like a fiddle. And how often had he ever done that? She was so smart. Smarter than him, really.
Renato was remembering all his old tricks. And some new ones. Now, he really ought to ask for a raise. See? With enough leverage, you could go anywhere. Renato had given away the location of the secret base. Fortunately, the Emperor thought it was all a trap. He even mistrusted his own daughter. Renato couldn't have done better if he'd planned it.
What have you done to me? Zenobia demanded. My own father thinks I'm a traitor.
So?
But I'm loyal. So what? You're a bastard, Renato, she said. Now, you love that about me. You really did want the core, didn't you? And the Iblis stone. Yep. He gloated. You get all that? She said to the far speaker Toad he'd failed to spot.
I am so relieved, my daughter,
said the far speaker. And Zenobia got into her ship and flew off. Damn it. The old far speaker trick. How had he missed it? This was very bad. Zenobia back in her father's good graces, and both of them ready to use the core and the Iblis stone. He got back on the Farfarer. Briefly, Renato thought of fleeing. The odds were surely against him. Never tell me the odds, he told himself. Odds confused him. He preferred to trust his gut. And so he sailed on to attack the fleet. Alone, if necessary. There were not many rebels here, and they were disorganized. The Empire had obviously attacked the secret base. The formerly secret base, whose location Renato had so helpfully pinpointed on a map. There was still time to turn around, wasn't there? But Renato hated turning around. Heroes don't turn around, they just own their screw-ups and turn them into impossible victories, right?
Ooh, the portal that led right into the middle of the fleet. It was a glaring weakness in the defense. Renato wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs.
The odd thing was, Renato's personal battle was going fairly well. The Ravens immediately in front of him were no quicker or tougher than usual. Where was the power of the core, blasting him off into the abyss?
And where was Zenobia? She must be up to something. But whatever it wasn't his problem. Not yet, anyway.
It was all going surprisingly well.
soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? At last, he came to Zenobia and the Emperor. She was sealing up a kind of squat coffin, banded with lead.
So glad you're here.
Croaked the Emperor.
You will be witness to my final victory.
That's creepy, Dad, said Zenobia. But thank you. Because of your shenanigans, we tested the core. It's really unstable. It could have blown us all up.
It could, said Renato, a little frustrated that she'd figured it out.
Anyway, we already destroyed your secret base, so we don't need a super weapon. We're just going to bury it. Do we, torture you? Or give you a medal?
Sometime later, Renato got an invitation to attend the Emperor's ritual sacrifice of his daughter. They took him out of his dungeon cell and gave him all his medals to wear. A little while after that, the lost gods returned, and the sun went black, and the Emperor ate his soul.
Oh, again?
But he already had all the secrets he needed.
He was sure of that. He must have not used them the right way. What was the best, worst mistake he could make?
Probably trusting that traitor Lapino.
The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. Faster than before? And he fell.
The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage.
Renato finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause.
And maybe Renato could use that somehow.
Renato couldn't quite put his paw on when he'd realized Lapino was working for the Empire. He'd never exactly seen Lapino sending coded messages to the palace, but he was sure. The rabbit had been on too many disastrous missions where he was the only survivor, or where he accidentally missed getting on the boat that went down to the abyss in flames. If Renato could prevent Lapino from getting back to the fleet with all the intelligence he'd probably gathered, it might be worth the trip. How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs.
Who wants to die first?
But he'd always felt that the rabbit resented him. Lapino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice? Ravens were landing everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, the rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lapino. At the slightest hint of danger, the mad rabbit would take off like a... well, a rabbit.
Lapino would betray him. The core was dangerous. Renato had a fleeting idea that the 2 ideas went together somehow. And then it was gone again. Oh, damn ideas. They never stuck around when you needed them. That had gone beautifully. Where was a bard when you needed one?
Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Now that he knew what the rabbit was, there were a few things about him that Renato didn't find so amusing anymore. You sent me an urgent message saying that you're in danger. Oh, I am. The Ravens are coming. Now, I got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Renato wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky River was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it. Traitor? I'm hurt, said Lapino. Why ever would you say that? We found your code book, said Renato.
They hadn't, but he hoped Lapino would blow his cover.
You got me,
Said Lapino.
and you know what? I don't regret a thing. It's always about you, isn't it? You're the pretty hero. You get the girl, you get the medal, and what do I get? Rabbit food.
I thought you liked rabbit food,
Go to hell.
said Lapino. And he made a gesture, and 20 ravens came out of nowhere and stabbed Renato to death. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it. How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lapino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lapino from at least 2 lynch mobs. But he'd always felt that the rabbit resented him. Lapino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Ooh, was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice? Hero wall, hero sword, firewall, fire extinguisher. Renato hoped this portal had been inspected recently. Ravens were landing everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, the rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lapino. At the slightest hint of danger, the mad rabbit would take off like a rabbit. Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Now that he knew what the rabbit was, there were a few things about him that Renato didn't find so amusing anymore. You sent me an urgent message saying that you're in danger. Oh, I am. The ravens are coming. Now, I got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Renato wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky Ripper was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Lysengram III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it. Renato felt like a real hero, brave and smart. He told the rabbit all about the Sky Ripper's God's Eye core.
I'll go get the core while you attack Zenobia.
He told the rabbit.
Oh, wait, I've an even better idea. I'll get the core and you attack Zenobia,
Said the rabbit.
Right, yeah, that is better.
Agreed Renato. Perfect. The traitor would make sure the Emperor got the core. Now Renato just needed the Emperor to use the core. If he could only get something that the Emperor wanted very badly. Zenobia. He could save her and bait the Emperor at the same time. Right. Now, all Renato had to do was fight his way through Zenobia's invading troops, sneak onto her ship and into her bedroom, and kidnap her without any of her dozens of guards alerting her.
Then he would rely on her love for him to convince her how evil her father was, so she'd run away with him instead of going back to her father, who was going to blow himself up.
It did sound a little risky. But Renato had a feeling it would work out somehow. It always did.